grade.
I mean, I will say this.
So you know what, Anthony? I'm sorry, I didn't. Well, you do kind of know, but don't know, right? You know about the question, right? The question was math. We should stop at 8th grade. Nothing else is needed after 8th grade, and just focus on financial literacy.
That's a fair statement.
You agree with
Um,
that?
yeah, mostly because if you think about it from us as an adults and just from understanding the way how the brain works, we unconsciously, consciously follow the models that we see in our everyday lives. So just to bring up the person that we both know, which is Rakim Sabri, who said that he inspired to be poor because he was already following. Excuse me, I had a shot on my show, so sorry. Uh,
You ain't bring us none?
hey, I mean, I got tequila and I got Fireball. I mean, got a little something over here.
Okay.
Uh, but what Rakim Sabri was saying is that he aspired to be poor because that's all he knew, and
Okay.
that he was following what he saw. So as a parent, we, I mean, as a child, we follow what our parents are doing, and if our parents only can do but so much, then it's up to us as children, even in 8th grade, to have is to use critical thinking. And I think that we don't teach critical thinking enough in the lower grade levels, so that when you go outside the real world, you can actually make the most informed decision necessary to take your finances to the next level. Because after pretty much in, I mean, like I was teaching 3rd grade and I taught them abstract algebra. So getting if I was able to teach kids at abstract algebra because I really love math and I actually brought the energy in that I really love math and enjoyed it. We had hats on one day, we were making cool voices, we were doing all the stuff. And everybody was learning. And because of that, I believe that we should not limit our children on what they should know and actually lean into what they could know. And I think that's where we ought to look at it that after the 4th grade, meaning grade level, once you get the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, we all know that multiplication is a higher form of addition, division is a higher form of subtraction. You got that down, you can do anything else. And I'll leave it there.
You kind of ran around a little bit. So your argument is that we don't need to go back past the 4th grade because they mastered math. Was it my dear Aunt Sally?
Yep.
Math, addition, subtraction, and division, right?
Yep.
But one of the things you said too is that why stop them from doing more if they can do more? So why just stop there when they can learn trig, calc, algebra, and all the other crazy, quirky mathematical things that are out there?
At that point,
Because they have the ability to do it a lot of times.
but it's not to say that they're going to stop after that because it depends on your job field. Obviously, you're going to use trig when it comes to doing your electrical work because you need to understand the differences between the hertz, using AC power versus DC power and converting and all that fun stuff. When you're doing airplanes, you're doing infinite values, not infinite values, imaginary values. So that's where you can use your trig and so forth. But at least
that's calculus too, and algebra to a certain degree.
Yeah, calc. I mean, because I'm thinking like calc 2, mostly once you get done calc 1, understanding that the derivatives and integrals. Um, but once you understand the whole basis of what it's supposed to do, and I mean, like I said, it really depends on the job field. And once you figure out what job field.
Wait a minute. We not at job. We at 4th grade, bro.
But at 4th grade, still, it's like, I mean, we talk about finances too. So let's say that after the 4th grade, I mean, it really after that point, you just got to chart where you want to go. But
All
if
right, so
finances from
let's do
finance,
this real quick.
okay,
I want to pull the post up so I can read it here, right? So it says, "Are we still acting like any math past the 8th grade is useful?" So that's the part, Anthony, that I don't think you got right. It's a loaded question. Switch it out for financial literacy. So I'm gonna read it again. So we're still acting like any math past the 8th grade is useful. So that this post is saying that math is not useful after the 8th grade, right? Switch it out for financial literacy. So I inherently have a problem with that because it does the thing that you're talking about. It limits the ability of our children in school, first and foremost. And so it's putting a cap on them, saying that the only thing we need to worry about is financial literacy. And Anthony, you never really had like a full on debate with me. It's nothing personal, brother.
I know.
We don't. All right. So
Free entertainment.
that, no, I just want to put that out because it's all love. And sometimes I've been accused of being very, very aggressive with people when I debate, right? But when you look at this, right, this whole thing about financial literacy, it's all about money, right? And I believe this was a black person that said this, right? So we have been brainwashed so much that our education is solely always about money. It's never about our true God-given gifts, abilities, and talents. So we're never saying that, yo, I can be a math genius. I'm just going to stop doing this because it ain't about no money. I.e., I'm also a product of the drug era, so this sounds like some crack dealing bullshit to me, in my opinion. But I have a problem with this because I feel we don't really take education seriously enough. And again, I got on here and I said earlier that I wasn't a super motivated student K through 12. I didn't really realize that I was a nerd or a learner when I got in college because I always read books. I don't know if I had the environment to really foster that and bring that out. Now, Kill, I've rambled on enough. What do you have to say about this?
So my original position on this is that it speaks, it does something that a lot of people do, which is they try to act as if mathematics and financial literacy are mutually exclusive.
Facts.
And what it sounds to me is like it would almost be, there's a parallel that I see. Like if it's almost like if somebody said we should stop teaching math and instead replace math with engineering. But
you need both. Yeah.
Just like you need math to do, because I really started thinking about this, and I started thinking back on like earlier in my teaching career about, when I taught personal finance, or when I was responsible for teaching an Algebra 2 class, and I just said, you know what, my students do need to know certain concepts, because they don't have a personal finance class at this particular high school out there.
Right.
I'm like, well, I can, I have a little autonomy. I can teach them some things that I think they need to know about credit cards and budgeting and investments and, stocks and whatnot, and the stock market and things like that. So I said, I'm gonna dedicate this whole fourth quarter of this school year, and that's what we're doing. But we still were doing math. We still were doing algebra, right? We still were using formulas, using simple interest formulas, compound interest formulas. And I think that like when I hear this, it's like we see so much conversation and so much content around financial literacy. It's like this buzzword, and like you said, like you alluded to earlier, how it is kind of amorphous terms that's just like thrown around. It's kind of like narcissism, right? It's like terms that are thrown around so much, and there's like often like not a real concrete definition that's being applied.
Facts.
So when people talk about financial literacy, and it's like, but a lot of the same people, I'm sure they have their own math deficiencies. So I'm always wondering, well, how financially literate can you become with those math deficiencies? Or is it that you just enjoy hearing people tell stories about how much money they made? Because at some point, it's kind of like when you go to like a conference, right? You go to a conference, you hear people present on certain topics, but then when you get kind of riled up. But when you go home and the conference is over. Now it's your responsibility to do some work on your own. Read some of those books that the presenters referenced, or read a book that one of the presenters wrote themselves, and continue on with that work. So I wonder about people that go to financial literacy workshops or
They don't work.
financial literacy conferences.
They don't work.
And then they come home like, okay, you learned about real estate. Okay, cool. Now you want to get into real estate deals. Okay, so you got to do some calculations. You got to figure out what's the ROI going to be on this real estate deal. But then it's I wonder how many people are well, this is algebra. I don't know how to do this. So it was cool for me to hear the stories about all the people making all the money, in real estate. But now when it's time for me to try to duplicate that and do some forecasting or whatever, they can't do it. So
and I guess I should do this as well. I'm biased here, so I always like to air out all my biases. I freaking hate the term financial literacy.
right.
And the reason why I hate the term financial literacy, number one, the term financial literacy has been hijacked by banks and financial institutions. It's kind of analogous to drug dealers giving out turkeys on Thanksgiving. So you have these companies that rip folks off all year long with this exorbitant usury. Look up the word usury. Interest rates, not y'all, I'm talking about the audience. And then they're like, all right, well, we're going to do these classes. And most of these financial literacy classes do what? How to write a check, how to balance your checkbook, if people even do that now, right? How to get a credit card. All of it is geared towards consumerism. And listen, we're all consumers at some point throughout the spectrum. We're all consumers. However, if that's all we are, we're doomed. We are doomed, and we're relegating ourselves to a life of misery and debt servitude. And so if we really want to talk about what's needed, we need real, holistic financial education. Understanding, yes, we're going to buy stuff. We're going to buy eggs and milk and bread, and we're going to buy a car. We're going to buy a house. We might send our children to school. We might have to figure out, is it wise to send our children to private school or public school? Can we figure that out mathematically or in a financial standpoint? Not necessarily about, everybody loves to talk about, Anthony, I'm not picking on you, but you don't mind. Everybody loves to talk about, well, I want to get the highest interest rate off my savings account. And I say, what difference does it make? Most Black folks ain't even got $1,000 in their account. So we're talking about pennies right now. And so we're doing these mental gymnastic things just to keep us busy instead of really dealing with the real issue. Real issue is, one, many of us overspend. We live above our means. Second is, many of us have not figured out how to maximize our skills to make more money. And so once we really start having real conversations, I don't think anybody just wants to be financially literate. But that's all I got, y'all. Sorry.
Well, one of the things that, because I did a post, it shows on here at least 23 hours ago. And I did this on X, formerly known as Twitter. It said, I've been thinking about how people.
That's an algebraic equation, by the way. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
So I tweeted, said, I've been thinking about how people who are allergic to tree nuts don't try nuts, don't spend money on nuts, don't want it around them. Why aren't we the same way with our goals? Anything that harm our goals, you should treat it as if it will kill you. But more so I couldn't, because you're so limited. I was really talking about how do you do it with your budget and also your financial situation. So it's not understanding that all sales are not your sale. Or put your blinders on when you go grocery shopping.
But that takes thought. And I know exactly what you're talking about, right? You're talking about, see, people don't realize this. Corporations spend billions of dollars to figure out people's psychology, their psyche. And so every time they do a sale, they know they're going to get X amount of people to come in to spend money. Big corporations, it is. But if you don't need a new pair of stockings or a new hat it's not really working in your best benefit. All you're doing is funding more people to get rich, and nobody's thinking about that, right? They're just making more people rich and making themselves poorer. And again, I'm not talking about your needs, right? This is the real conversation is needs versus wants,
Hmm.
and those are the conversations we have to have. And again, I'm not trying to accuse anybody because I have needs and I have wants. All these gadgets, I don't necessarily have to have an iPhone. Do I convert that to a need and a want? Yeah. Is it business? Yeah. But I probably could get away with doing something much cheaper. But what do you think? Well, wait a minute. Let me do this, y'all. We got some people that are commenting, don't like to leave people out. Our grandmamas and nanas always told us to welcome our guests when they come home. So let's start with Mr. John Public. Welcome, welcome, welcome. He says money is grains and knows no race. John, I don't think you really know each other, but hello, I'm Kamari. I call bullshit on that. And the reason I call bullshit on that is because if money knows no race, there would be no disparity in income. There would be no disparity in income, in housing, right? There will be no disparity in jobs.
Well,
Just those three. There's disparities in all of them. Go ahead, Anthony. What you
challenge
got?
you on that one.
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
One of the things is that money is one thing. It has no name. It doesn't do anything. But it's the systems that are in place that kind of help protect the finances that people are either trying to accumulate or stopping other people from getting it. So that's the only reason why I want to challenge it, because it's more so the system, not so much the money or the currency at that time.
What if the system that's being produced acknowledges the race, and the system has systemically marginalized and oppressed people? You would have to say to me, and I welcome a challenge, that money does know race. And you can look at the facts, like the stats over the years. And I understand what he's trying to say, but I also like to have real conversations.
Yeah, because I think what you alluding to is most like
I didn't
what
allude,
likely y'all
I
both alluding to is the systems that are in place, not so much the money itself.
But how can we talk about money when not talk about the system? There would be no, if there was no system, there would be no printing of money. We might have cowrie shells. We might have sand. We might have IOUs. We might barter, right? Money as an instrument, a tool. And I'm probably getting way too nerdy for the audience. Y'all let me know if I'm getting too nerdy. There will be no such thing as money as a construct.
It's all about feelings.
But
We
now
get
you're,
down to the feelings though.
but now you're backing away from the statement that he made.
I'm not trying to back away. It's just trying to fully understand or flesh out what in the world he's talking about. Because I hear this all the time. Money is green and knows no race. That's like saying the rocks on the ground knows no house. Like,
But that's like the people that say, just because black people are millionaires now, that there's no racism. I call bullshit on that too.
true too.
Right? So again, listen, I do believe black people have probably the most advantage or opportunities than we've ever had on this land in the United States ever than before. I could also argue that we probably are facing some of the highest levels of racism as well.
Yeah.
Maybe not as high as it wasn't as high in enslavement nor during Jim Crow, but it's getting pretty bad. It's getting pretty bad. And I'm a history nerd as well, so forgive me. All right, so let's get to the rest of the folks. Lawrence, what up, brother? All right, Lawrence says, why do we need to follow a new way of doing math? I'm definitely against Common Core goofiness. Listen, I heard that Singapore math is fly.
I used to feel the same way until I had to learn it, so I could teach it. And when I learned it, I realized that one of the goals of it is to prepare young people at the elementary level to think algebraically, so that way when they get, because a lot of students will say this, and I've had this experience with students that say, high school students that say, I used to like math until the letters got involved, right? So I think what they were trying to articulate was that the transition from arithmetic to algebra was disruptive. It was not a smooth transition. Even if you argue that, in first grade they're doing algebra, because if you say, well, 2 + 2 equals this empty box, you just don't put a variable x there in the empty box. It's still algebra technically. But what a lot of the Common Core does is like it prepares the young children to think algebraically. So if it's taught correctly, that's another thing. If it's taught correctly, then they should be able to make a smoother transition into algebra, because they're already accustomed to thinking in a certain way. And what it also does too, again, if it's taught correctly, because we often assume that, the teacher is going to be the most proficient in their practice, right? Often doesn't happen, because teachers are humans, and a lot of times it requires them to go home at night and study, or them to study over the summer or on the weekends. And, just like students don't always study, teachers don't always study either. But it provides different options, So a parallel that I see is with, in the finance area, where we talk about having multiple streams of income. What this does is it kind of creates multiple streams of problem solving approaches, right? So like with multiplication, like 35 years ago, I'm in elementary school. We learned what we call the standard multiplication algorithm. That's what I learned. I didn't learn nothing else. Nobody taught me nothing else. But now, it is like the lattice method. There's partial products method. There's and all of these things. They help you to gain a better conceptual understanding of math. Because a little background on me, when I was, through my K through 12 experience, I was pretty strong at math and pretty proficient for the vast majority of the time. I had some rough patches, but even when I was excelling, I was very good at algorithms and procedures. I had a very strong procedural understanding of math. My conceptual understanding of math left much to be desired. It's only like within the last, and even as a teacher, like when I first started teaching back in 2005, I'm coming into the classroom because I wasn't an education major. Like I said, I was a finance major. I was a career changer. So I'm coming into the classroom armed with, my own learning style. And then I'm just trying to project my learning style onto the students in front of me. And it's not until like the last, I would say 5 or so years that I start really, when I start, my company, and I start doing a whole lot of tutoring, that I'm developing and also teaching at Cheney, having to teach the Common Core and whatnot to the education majors and math methods, that I start to develop a conceptual understanding. Like, whoa, okay, so that's what division really means. That's what's happening when you're dividing, instead of me just knowing the steps and memorizing. Because what happens is people get jammed up on standardized tests, because the standardized test creators, they know that people oftentimes lack this conceptual understanding. So they'll purposefully put questions on there that will test your conceptual ability to reason conceptually about a question. They won't just give it to you straightforward, like, here, multiply these two numbers. There's, you know how it is. They'll do some roundabout, question, where it's like, huh? Like what? But if you have conceptual understanding, you'd be able to figure it out easily. But a lot of us don't have that. Like a lot of like high performance students even don't have the conceptual understanding. So
Yeah, they're just glorified test takers.
Right.
yeah. So so I'm on the almost on the Common Core bandwagon, because I've seen, like, it's helped me to become a better math student.
Well, give us go through that, like Common Core. What is it, and why is it helping to gear our students for algebra? Because that's what I heard you say.
Yeah. So what it does is it's introducing those algebraic concepts, like at an early age, like even with, whereas like, okay, like distributive property as an example. Instead of
What's distributive property for everybody?
all right, so like simply put, it's, remember from algebra 1, if you had like 3,
I think I failed algebra 1.
So there's like a 3, a random number, and then there's parentheses. Within the parentheses, you have an expression like x plus 2, right? Distributive property says that you basically distribute, or you give that 3.
That's what that is.
Right.
So I know what it is, but I don't conceptually understand it.
Yeah. So you're giving the outside number to everything else. But let's say it was all numbers. Let's say it's 3. Let's say you're trying to do 35 times 6.
Mhm.
So you can use the distributive property with that, and you break the 35 down, and we're in a base 10 system, so that kind of makes things easy, right? So you break the 35 down into 30 plus 5. So you imagine that you got 30 plus 5 inside the parentheses.
Okay.
And outside. So then it's like you're creating two separate multiplication problems, except one of them is kind of easy because you got a 0 at the end. Like a lot of textbooks will call it, a lot of teachers call those happy numbers. So I do the same thing, right? But I get cultural with it because I take it back to, instead of HAPPY, I say HAPI, the Happy River, which was the ancient name for the Nile River. So when we're dealing with happy numbers, I'm telling the students about, oh no, so this takes us back to ancient Kemet, right? Because we're happy that we can do this math easier. So you're trying to do 35 times 6. So you're going to do 30 times 6, and then you're going to do 5 times 6. And you can do 30 times 6 because that 0 is irrelevant. You can pretend like that 0 is not there.
Got it.
The 3 times 6, that gives you 18.
Just add a 0.
Back on there. So that's the 180, right? And then the 5 times 6 is 30. So now you're doing addition between the 180 and the 30.
Gotcha.
Product of 210. So that's like something that, that's one of the examples of something that's introduced in Common Core.
Because I did something similar, but I did it with the third graders again. So I had them do the basic one where I did 2 plus, like you had 2 plus 2 equals X or whatever. So I did them with that. What I did was 2 plus 2 equals C, because I was teaching them A plus B equals C. And then, so what I did was, I was like, well, let's replace the 2 with an A. Let's just call it A. And then the next 2, we can call it, it'll be A as well because it's 2, they both the same. So assuming A equals 2. Then I was like, well, let's make B a random number. I was like, hey, kid, pick a number. Like they'll pick one. And then we'll say, let's call that B. And then what we'll do is, since I'll put it in, we have it up in the corner like a key. And then because it's already as a key, they can use it as a reference point when they're doing the equation. So that's a little easier for them when they start doing it on their own to create with the X's and whatever. I always tell them, like, hey, we can make up a letter. It doesn't even matter. So that now that we can understand, like, okay, now that we have A, can it be a negative or a positive number? So that's how we were doing it that way. So it will help them understand that that letter could be negative or positive, no matter where they place it at. But since we have in A plus B equals C, we don't know if C is going to be negative or positive. It depends on the variables of A and B. So that's how I was actually teaching the students, to help them understand the variables. Because like how you said, that transition into seeing the variables was a big deal. And I think because they take summers off, it's really hard to come back to school and then remember, and then they only get like a week or 2 on a unit plan to start then switching over to the variables. Like there isn't a good transition. And I think it should start earlier before they have that summer break, so that when they get ready to see it again, it's like a refresher.
Yeah. Those summer math packets are clutch.
Yeah.
I know children and parents feel like it's a punishment, but when you think about, our condition as a people and how far behind we are academically anyway, we're playing catch up.
Right.
Did you go to Morgan?
I did.
Hey, well, welcome Morgan alum. So, because I saw
Morgan's in the house.
Were we there at the same time?
We were not there at the same time. I remember seeing you inside the Morgan chat, and I followed you a long time ago.
Okay.
And so I was looking, I was like, why do you look so familiar? When I looked up the thing, I was like, oh, that's why.
Small world. Small world.
Very small world.
All right, let's get to some more of these. All right.
No,
That's fine. All right, so Lawrence says math is logic and critical thinking. I would agree. Do we all agree with that?
That's true. That's very
Anthony, do we all have one accord?
Yeah, we don't.
I think about this comment.
Which one?
The math is logic and critical thinking.
Yes.
Because this is why this is something that I talk about when I talk about geometry. Again, like, a lot of people have like a superficial view of what mathematics is. People, when they take a geometry class or they reflect on geometry, they kind of look at it was just a bunch of shapes and angles and triangles and all that. But again, the deeper meaning of geometry is really about logic. You know, it's about logic and the proofs. Like I didn't appreciate this when I was younger, but
I hated proofs.
if I think if more people and we could do proofs in like any area, any branch of
We're
mathematics,
not doing proofs tonight, y'all.
but no,
It would take all night long. Yeah.
but just think about this as an idea. It really trains you in terms of how to start somewhere with some given a piece of information, and then use either deductive or inductive reasoning to prove a point based on facts and based on objective reality.
But isn't that all math?
Yeah.
Whether it's geometry, algebra, calculus.
Yeah.
Not all.
Implicit in geometry, and then the way that translates to everyday life, and then in to the masses of people. If you just think about a lot of the so-called arguments people make on social media based on how they feel or just things that are just totally incoherent, like what geometry could do is train people into knowing not to make those types of arguments.
Okay, Anthony said not all. Why not all?
Well, for a perfect example, like, because then you get into math theory. That's why I said not all math. Because you like some of the things that people thought was never real, like a 4D, a fourth dimensional thing becoming a 3-dimensional product. And a perfect example is the Klein bottle. And that's one of the concepts that, you know, it's kind of hard to imagine, but it's doable. But again, like I said, I don't want to go too far off the rails, but
we get nerdy tonight, y'all. What'd you say?
I said that's beyond my scope. I would like to learn about that one day.
All right, we're gonna have a whole special show on Klein bars.
Like I said, this book is great. Love it.
All right.
Love it.
So Lawrence says math is not emotional, colorless. It's just facts. Love it.
Mhm.
Math at a 4th grade level is foolishness. I didn't say that, Anthony. You need at least algebra 2 or pre-calculus. All right, Lawrence says, we all know each other. Lawrence says financial literacy equals power. I don't know about that one, but I know why you say it, and I get it. People barely know arithmetic, and you want them to stop there. SMH, a society that limits education is doomed to fail. I have to give them no warnings on that.
Think about it, it's like arithmetic it's the baseline. Like if we get people to that baseline and then add in the rest of the stuff that we just talked about today, which is the critical thinking, asking the right questions, and actually either learning how to control your feelings, you can take arithmetic to so many levels. It's like, I don't like to limit where you're going at, because just because you understand it, like how we just talked about just basic A plus B and the distributive properties, you can take that to so many other things in life. Like you and your wife.
Yeah, but I think the pushback is at 4th grade, you don't want to have the life experience to understand where you can take it to.
I think
if you don't go deeper than that, you're limiting yourself. Go ahead, Akil. I'm sorry.
And I think, you know, the way it's being interpreted and the way I interpreted like the original post is like this idea that, you know, once you finish 8th grade and you've taken whatever 8th grade math class that is, then you'll never, it's almost like you were in prison. You were imprisoned by math, by having to study math, and now you've been released, and now you never have to study math ever again. So I don't think that's what you're saying about 4th grade, saying, okay, 4th grade, then they don't.
Right. I think you're saying you're good enough at 4th grade to go learn some other things, but you're not saying that's the ceiling. You're not saying it's the ceiling. The way that post said it was like, that's the ceiling. Everything else is a waste.
Right.
And again, my point is like, you can't really switch it out, so to speak, because you still need it. Like, because, you know, people would be upset, because I often think about what if we concede and give people, because it's a very popular sentiment. And what if we concede and give people what they claim to want? And we say, okay, well, we're getting rid of algebra 1, algebra 2, pre-calc, calculus, whatever. And, you know,
they would never do any of the higher functions. People are stupid.
We're placing literacy. But then, I'm trying to teach you financial literacy. I'm trying to teach you compound interest. So now we got to deal with, exponential functions. And then I write this exponential function on the board, and then you're like, whoa, what the hell is this? I thought you said we wasn't doing math no more. And I'm like, bro, like, I can't have interest unless we use this formula and formula. So it's like, I don't think people realize that when they make these claims, so I think that's very important that they consider what it is they're actually asking for.
All right, now Florence is ready to get dicey. Currently, the math science reading levels in the Black community suck. It makes sense why our community struggle. It's deeper than that, bro. You know that. You know that. All right, Don Johnson's in the building, everybody. How are you, sir? Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Money, like math, is amorphous. It lacks a moral compass. It's merely a tool. I agree with that. Money is green to anyone that uses it. Your dollar is the same as my dollar. If you want to get philosophical, we can go there.
Go for it, Kamar.
Because Warren Buffett's dollar is not the same as my dollar. So we can sit here. I mean, we can act like certain. I mean, y'all know the term. We're all black. All money ain't good money, and it has a psychological and emotional. I don't know what that's called, right? We probably need a therapist or a psychologist on here, but we are looking at that and saying, I don't want this money from this person, because that $1 comes with more ties and more responsibilities and more burdens than that dollar from Anthony or from Akil. So, and again, I can get a little philosophical from time to time. Still Rocks is in the building. What up, baby? You right in here. I appreciate you. So, Still Rocks, I think you might be a little bit late, but what do you think is more important? Is math more important than financial literacy? Have you ever thought about that? I'm going to read a post real quick just so we could all chime back in on what we're talking about. But now I got to find the post. Where'd the post go? Here's the post. Nope, that's not the post. All right, I am not being a good host right now, y'all.
I was actually looking at some of my old math books from Morgan.
Oh, you're really geeking out.
I mean, I really enjoyed the class, except for, the teacher Granger. I didn't appreciate him until I left. And I switched over to elementary education. So.
But I think that kind of goes to Akil's point, right? Sometimes children don't know what's good for them. That's why we got to make them eat their Brussels sprouts. They won't eat no vegetables. They'll just eat candy all day long because they don't know no better. And so then we'll just have a bunch of emotionally and intellectually stunted children running around here. So we can't just give them what they want all the time. As I go off on a little rant, I do feel that's a major downfall for a lot of our children. Parents just giving children what they want. Our job as parents, as stewards, is to help them to become adults, not to become better children. And when we just kind of give them everything they want, we're not helping them reach their potential. But that's just me. I don't know what the rest of y'all think. What do y'all think about that?
I agree.
I would say that giving them what they want, I would say it depends on the parent, and also the child. Like,
we're talking about the child
getting everything that they want.
Yes.
Yeah, they miss out on the struggle. Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, right. You don't get strength does not come without struggle. It just doesn't happen. And so by making everything coddly and soft, they are missing a key building block to becoming strong.
Isn't there a psychological mindset of if you give something to somebody, it's a surprise for the first time. The second time you give it to them, it becomes almost an expectation. The third time you give something to somebody, it becomes a need, almost as like a desire at that point. So understanding the rule of three, since we're talking about numbers here, and that's the reason why, like, having this understanding of financial literacy, of like all this free information that we're giving people right now on YouTube, people kind of already expect it and demands it for it to be free. So when somebody comes on here and try to say, "Hey, I'm gonna start charging," everybody's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You never charged before. Like, where's my free content?" So try to add on.
Yeah, but there's more to it than that. Because free content has also become very much commoditized, right? So,
True.
is your stuff good? Is it just okay? Is it great? Right. So that's the thing. But yeah, I could talk to you forever about social media strategies. Still Rocks 33 says it's like I was able to explain the products and services, but not always able to formulate the numbers. All right, I think I missed a piece. I did. I'm sorry. Math has always been my Achilles heel. As financial professional, I felt like that excuse me, y'all. I felt like sometimes did a disservice to people because I struggle with the math. I would disagree. It's not the math. You understand the function and formula and the reason why you're applying this to the situation. I don't think we all have to be Rain Man running around here doing math equations instantaneously in our head.
I do.
Oh,
Math
you disagree with me? Okay.
Well, because like I used to coupon heavily. So every time I go inside the store, I'm thinking about the total cost of that product and how much I could actually get it for versus what's on sale. That's
You can figure that out with a calculator.
well, I mean, but I've been doing it so often. Like, when you do things enough, you can do it in your head at that point.
Right, but we're not talking about you, Anthony. We're talking about the people.
Yeah.
People. Talking about the brothers and sisters.
I want to limit people. It's like we all can do it. Like if people can nerd out about people on stats in their football on every Sunday, or basketball, or the running stats on like how Shakari did an awesome job running. It's like
Shout out to Shakari.
Yeah, if everybody can nerd out on that, they can nerd out on just about anything. So I don't want to limit people or try to say like, oh, you can't. Like you can. You just need to put in as much reps as you do learning somebody else's stats, learn your own stats.
Listen, the great educator, Dr. Jawanza Kenjufu, told us that time on task is very important. So I agree with you. But if he doesn't see that need, I'm not going to beat him up about that, right?
Okay.
And because he talked about it in terms of his job, right?
Okay.
I'm sure he's very proficient at doing his job without being Rain Man with his numbers. All right. Still Rock says never too late to learn, right? I agree. Right. Too many free options to rebuild those building blocks, right? So you got Khan Academy, you got a kill, what's your YouTube, all that math.
All this math,
excuse me. That's why I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, you definitely learned on calculators. There are some good interest rate calculators I refer to. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Trying to do compound interest and figuring out, is somebody clicking something by their microphone? It's bleeding over. Oh, thank you. But in trying to figure out, what your interest rate or what your account balance is going to be in 10 years based on 21%. And yes, I know we can do the law of 72, but they have calculators for that. And if you just want to figure out what it's going to take to double it, that's cool too. But I don't think you need to feel bad about it. That's all I'm saying. We get beat down enough about a lot of stuff out here in the world.
I do think that like a lot of us have an over reliance on calculators.
That's
right. I mean, I tell students like we're not, once you get to a certain level, if you have to multiply 348 times 7,926, I don't expect you to take out a piece of paper and a pencil and actually do that manually. I want you to
348.
But calculator. We got to go with efficiency. You know what I'm saying? We got to be efficient. Once you get to a certain level, I think. But I don't believe in just having students go straight to the calculator, and never learning. Because again, it helps you develop the conceptual understanding.
Right. No, I agree with that. Really, I was just joking around.
Another part of math is really like the relationship between numbers, because that's when your fluency and your numeracy, just developing relationships between numbers, their factors, their multiples, and then that enables you to just like kind of figure stuff out and just be able to recognize patterns from a distance that a person that doesn't have that fluency with numbers won't even recognize. Like you'll be looking at some numbers, and then that's something that's transferable, because then you might be in a crowd of people and you'll see like how people are organized, and you'll notice something, because it's like a mathematical arrangement. You might notice like it through a mathematical lens, and then you see something and you're like, okay, I see what I kind of can see what's about to happen.
Okay, so speaking of mathematical lens, I want to do a quick math problem that everybody can get involved in. So this is a content creator about CT is dope, right? He's a funny black comic, but he did a math problem and I thought it was funny, but I want to see what y'all think about it.
Time to read. Can you answer this? There are 10 people in a room. You go in and kill 8 of those 10. How many people actually remain in that room? Reply with your answer and I'll DM you. I'm not going to DM you. If you're wrong, you have to repost it with who you lost to. I didn't lose. This is the person who lost that sent it to the person that sent it to me. So I enjoy a good word problem, and this is about to be hilarious. I will, however, make a follow-up video and give you guys the correct answer, because I know a lot of you will have the wrong answer. Read carefully. See you soon.
All right, so just to read over it again, can you answer this? There are 10 people in a room. You go in and kill 8 of those 10. How many people actually remain in that room? Anybody in it? I should have made a prize out of this, but
You can always
I'm not going to do it now.
yeah, no. You want me to go first or
I'm wondering what Lawrence got. Lawrence still rocks. Anybody? But yes, Anthony, you probably did it in your head already.
Oh, I finished it when he was started reading. I was like,
but when you look at this, right, this is critical thinking and some deductive reasoning. That's all it is. It's not even really a math. I mean, it is math, but it's not even really math. Anybody should be able to do this.
It's like saying what color is Lincoln's white horse. When I was reading it. So if I'm wrong, hey, I'll give you my thought process. So
Lawrence,
I'm saying 11 because they might be dead, but aren't they still people?
I would agree.
So
what you gotta kill?
That's what I'm sticking with.
I said the same thing, but these problems, like I have to admit, like I have a weakness with some of these problems. I still don't know the answer to the question, and I'll admit this. Like I'm man enough to admit this. I still don't know the answer to the question about the guy that goes in and steals $100 from the store and then buys $70 worth of stuff.
So I hate that question because I interpret it as an accountant.
And then $30 from the register. I think that's part of my problem too, like thinking about accounting, So I don't.
Yeah, because they stole $70 worth of product too. That's what I'm looking at. It's like, okay. All right, so Lawrence said 3. Anthony said 11. Akil said 11. I say 11. All right, let's. I almost want to go back and break out the pen and pad.
Time to read. Can you answer this? There are 10 people in a room. You go in and kill 8 of those 10. How many people actually?
All right, so it all starts out. There's 10 people in a room, right? So we put it on 10 little stick figures. 10 people in the room. Everybody's in the room.
Remain in that room. Reply with your answer and I'll DM you. I'm not going to DM you. If you're wrong, you have to repost it with who you lost to. I didn't lose. This is the person who lost that sent it to the person that sent it to me. So I enjoy.
So it didn't go. So there's 10 people in the room, right? You have to also count yourself as well of being in that room. So we doing stick figures in a little box. It's actually 11 people in that room. Somebody killed 8 of them. So that, right. Yes. Keyword is remain. Thank you. You are correct. So everything happened and is contained in that room. So I would say 11 as well. Nobody ever left the room.
Right. Nobody left.
Right.
So.
But I find some of those word games kind of cool every now and again because you're right. If you do everything on pen and pad, paper and pencil, and you're just like doing equations, you never really get to the conceptual part, in my opinion, of what, because Khalil said, not Khalil, Akil, excuse me, y'all. I'm tired. But attacking various things at different places and different levels helps you to get more of a conceptual grasp and deeper understanding of a thing, in my opinion.
Now, I do like having conversations about word problems, because you probably seen that T-shirt where like they say only in a math class can somebody have 85 watermelons, and nobody asked the question like what's wrong with them. It's like in a word problem, like I want to make this number 85, and there's this word problem. It deals with watermelon, so let's just make this guy like I like actually having those conversations with students. Like, this is kind of ridiculous, like, because I just, that shows me that you're thinking,
right? And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, right? That you're thinking, and you can ratchet up or down to whatever the expected level you need to be on.
Yeah, because that's a valid question. Like, why does he have 85 watermelons? And it might be a valid reason. He might be selling watermelons. You know, he might be, you know, on a nice hot day, he might have a distribution network. Like, might have a plug. You know, he'd sell watermelons, or they might be making fruit salads, or he might have a contract with somebody. You know, some grocery stores or something.
But I think it's good for is if you think about it, even from a a software engineer. Like, they have to ask those critical questions to the customer to make sure that they're getting the proper answer, give them the proper answer. And that's the reason why I do like that you're still teaching, right?
Yeah, I'm up at Cheney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing that at at Arundel Mills, like around that area. I forgot what it's called. Habit Harmon. That's what I was at.
Okay.
So for the rest of us who don't know what Arundel Mills are, because there's people that watch and listen to this across the country, can you key them in, sir?
It's a county in Maryland.
Okay. A rich county too, right?
And Anne Arundel County.
Anne Arundel County, yeah.
It's a rich county too, right?
It's medium. Okay. Montgomery County is one of the high ones.
I thought PG was the highest.
It's the most populated. I'll give you that.
Oh, but you know what? I'm also thinking about black population. Right. I haven't looked at this in a while.
Shout out to Marion Barry, RIP Marion Barry, because a lot of the programs in place enabled a lot of black people to get some money, you know, and get, you know, get some government jobs, and then enabled them to, you know, move into like PG County, and, you know, a lot of wealthy black people are in PG County and Montgomery County.
Yep, that is a fact. So shout out to the great ancestor.
And when I was young, I was unaware of media and how media really works. So I was young. My introduction to Marion Barry, because I didn't know he was in SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinator.
You just knew he smoked crack.
Yeah. We seen it on the news, on TV, and I'm like, and that's what they wanted us to see. And then years later, I found out about his like political heritage. And he was a chemistry major. He was a chemist. You know,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a chemistry major at Lemoyne-Owen, I think he went to, because he's from Memphis.
Okay.
Well, Tennessee, but he did undergrad at Lemoyne-Owen. Then he was in SNCC, and he was there. He was on a higher level, but he was there with Kwame Ture and all of them, you know. So it made sense why they would try to, you know, make his legacy. Right. And then like when I went away to college, because for my first year of school, I was at Morehouse before I transferred to Morgan. And, you know, people were making jokes, and DC people didn't like those jokes. And I didn't get it, because I just was like, y'all mayor's a crackhead. Like, you know what I mean? Like me being 18 and me being an asshole in 17, like I didn't get it. But then like years later, when I really started to study him, I'm like, damn, like, you know, they tried to magnified this brother's weakness and tried to have that overcompensate for all of his work that he did throughout his whole life.
But was it really a weakness? He's a human being. He's a man, just like anybody else, right? He's fallible. I mean,
didn't lean into that, I'm sure.
Vices, I look at our vices as weaknesses.
Okay. I mean, okay. So I don't necessarily look at our vices as weaknesses, right? Even though they can be technically. If you like, you know what? I can't get. Yeah, I'm going to start clowning. But if you like to indulge, right? Sugar is a drug.
Yeah.
You like drinking a Coke or
Mhm.
Pepsi. That's been proven to be just as addictive as cocaine. So, I find it, and again, we're getting more philosophical here. I find it interesting what they choose to demonize and what's perceived as okay, especially when it comes to Black folks. But real quick, since you brought it up, you go to the great ancestor and he did a lot of work. Let's just bring him up because I know a lot of people probably don't know who or what Marion Barry is, right? So I just pulled up the wiki. Again, something we all can get to. Just pull out that beautiful computer in your pocket, your phone, right? So Marion Barry was the former mayor of D.C. at one point. And as Akil brought up, he was a part of SNCC. In the 60s, he was involved in the civil rights movement, first as a member of the Nashville student movement, and then serving as the first chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. Right. So, it talks about Barry came to the national prominence as a mayor of the national capital for the first prominent civil rights activist to become a chief executive of a major American city.
Mhm.
So basically, he was the mayor of DC.
One more thing.
Yep.
Almost forgot. In '89, when Howard students were protesting about conditions on campus, the cops, they had their orders. They were planning on going in there and shooting them kids. And Marion Barry, as the mayor, stood up and said, "No, y'all not doing that."
Really?
Yeah, that's another thing that's key about him. And that when I learned about that, that made me think about. And I know a lot of people. This is a touchy subject in Philly about Wilson Good, the move bomb in '85,
Yeah.
and like, okay, well, it just made me think about that. Made me think about a contrast.
Yeah.
But
No. Yeah. Very similar. Very similar. I don't think Mayor Good was a little bit different though in that regard. He kind of threw his hands up, but he never ordered the bombing. That's the thing I think a lot of people don't realize.
right.
So, well, Akil, since you brought that up, I figure we got to bring up the other great ancestor.
Come on, we know you love history, man.
Love it. You know why? Because history can predict the future if you do enough research.
Wasn't that a term that says time doesn't repeat itself, people do?
Or history doesn't repeat itself. It's something like that. I need to look that up. I couldn't remember, but it said, Malcolm said this, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. And not only did Malcolm talk about that, if you go to this great book right here, The Miseducation of the Negro, Dr. Carter G. Wilson talks about that a lot as well. And that came out way before Malcolm.
So
this book came out, I believe, in 1933.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kel.
So you said about history, like, repeating itself or whatnot. That's we could say that a lot of mathematical equations model that. So if you think about like y equals mx plus b as an example, because people often say, well, another day went by, I still haven't used y equals mx plus b. But it's a way to like predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know the conditions, you know what your slope is, you know what your rate of change is, you know what your time is. Like, okay, I want to predict like what are things going to be like in 30 years from now, 40 years from now. You know your y-intercept, you know your conditions. You plug everything into the formula. It's something. But the question is like, is it a straight line curve? Is it a sine curve?
And
like, is it an exponential? Like, what is it? Like, that's when we get into really applying the math. And then, but when you think about things through that, again, that mathematical lens, then you're able to kind of foresee, oh, okay, this is probably about to happen. Because it's happened before. Just like Malcolm said, you study the conditions. And when you see the same conditions, it's 20 years later, but the same conditions that were there 20 years ago, whatever happened 20 years later is probably going to happen again.
Absolutely.
But that's the reason why I don't like how some people actually say, well, if you don't invest when you're 25, this is going to happen. You're never going to make it to $1 million and so forth. But they don't talk about the pivot that actually happens in life. Either A, you make more money, or you decrease the people that you're around. You change your circle. You do all of these things to change your trajectory, even if it's just 1 degree. And that's why they say the power of 1%. When there's so many stories out there, but like even with people who are looking into racing, they do the 1% rule, which is just take that 1% of changing the pillow when they go to travel, or they change their sneakers, or they, like how Kamari did, she changed her hair just a little bit. Just that little 1% can take you so much further. But that's the thing I hate about, in hearing about it a lot in the financial space. It's like you do one thing and it's just going to take you into this one trajectory. No, you might get there a little bit, but you course correct as you go along. Like it's like an
Some
air.
people, but I would say some people course correct. Inertia is a real thing. Some people get stuck in that thing, whatever that thing is, and they never course correct. So I do think a lot of people aren't conscious of just, making a 1% change little by little. Some people just are are happy with what they're doing. Let's say it's nothing.
Right.
So, I get it. I have conversations all the time with clients, and they're like, oh, I owe taxes again this year. I'm sick of this. You didn't make any change, right?
Right.
There is no power in being reactive. All the power is being proactive. You have to do something. You have to make a change. So,
Can I give you some air horns on that one? Because that was a bar, sir.
I didn't even. He just want to show off he got a board like me. That's all.
Come on.
So Laura says, definitely knew my wife and I were going to be millionaires with the MX plus B. We saw the conditions and followed the pattern.
Smart move.
Mm-hmm. All right. Wealth is merely your efforts divided by contributions times rate of return times length of time. Plus, for some people, luck. I'm glad you brought in luck because there is a factor of luck in there. Some people don't like to talk about luck, but there are some things that you cannot explain that some people might have a benefit and some people might not. And that's the thing. But luck divided by an inherent skill.
Like Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about, it's luck that you actually are alive right now, considering all the sperm and all the DNA and all the stuff like that. Like
You
that
just want to talk
1%
about
is
shooting
a
the
lot.
balls. That's all. You just want to talk about shooting the balls. That's all. You ain't slick. You just try to get it in there. See, this is what happens when you get a bunch of fellas talking about math and other money things.
And I had my alcohol for a day, so good.
Okay. We're going to put you on a wagon next time you come on. Put you in detox. All right. So Lawrence has got some more mathematic terms. All right. Enter the equation for wealth. Yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day, right? Let's land the plane on this. What do you think? And I'm gonna start with you, Professor Kill. What do you think Black students need to be doing to recognize their ability in math?
I think that it's hard to do. It's hard for them to recognize that when they've been deeply ingrained, or it has been so deeply ingrained in them that either math is too difficult or math is irrelevant by the time they get to high school. I think that the best thing we can do as a community, not just as parents, but as everybody in the community, is be very much more proactive in terms of developing just math fluency and making math as much a part of everyday life as we can. Well, and just recognizing all the teachable moments that are around us. And, so I'm gonna plug my book again, because that's really what the book is. It's like,
where's the book at?
So the book's
on the screen.
The book's on Amazon.
Here we go.
Math Volume 1. And what I did was I just identified, like, in this particular volume, like 20 different like everyday activities. And then I show how to use those as like ways to practice unit conversions, or practice proportions and ratios, or practice using like the language of fractions, because so many students will tell you, like, I hate fractions. I never like fractions. And I think it's because they never understood them conceptually. So they seem difficult to them. But I think if you have 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds that are like kind of taught to, express quantity in the language of fractions. So it's like, we get pizza and you take a slice of pizza and then your mom says to you, your dad says to you, well, okay, you just got 8. You just took an 8 for the pizza. And then at a young age, you're programming them to think in terms of fractions. And, so the language of math is not just limited to the natural numbers or like whole numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like, no, okay, like, and even when you think about yourself, and I think this can also lead to people being better members of community, because if you understand the concept of a fraction, you're thinking about yourself not as, okay, I'm not just one whole human being, but if it's 5 of us, I'm one person, I'm 1/5 of this group.
Right.
So it's not just about me. I'm 1/5, and we got to come together like Voltron.
Right. Before we wrap up though, I do want you to talk about hystematics. Because I was watching you on something, and then me and Jimmy was talking, and I was like, "Yeah, that's what Akil's always talking about," but I can't remember exactly what it was. But can you break down what your theory of hystematics is?
So, what hystematics is like a teaching framework where I use history to teach math, and at the same time, you can use math to teach history. So it's different ways to make math more memorable. By using like stories from history, whether they be in the word problems that you use, or even if you try to be intentional, like with teaching young people addition and subtraction. If you want to talk about, like, you want to inform them of, or at least just mention or expose them to like the Haitian Revolution as an example, then you might create an addition problem where the sum is going to be 1,791. So then once you get the answer, then you can segue and say, oh, well, 1791. Oh, that's when the Haitian Revolution started. And then we have a side conversation about the Haitian Revolution. Because so it's a way to like fit it in. And it kind of was birthed out of kind of necessity, because all these years I'm teaching math classes, but I really want to talk to my students because I know they have deficiencies in math, but they also have deficiencies in knowledge of self and in their own history. So I'm trying to figure out organic ways to educate them about these other things, or about people like Assata Shakur or Malcolm X, or, Paul Robeson, Cecil B. Moore, people like that. So I, figured out ways to use math. And even like, there are a lot of ways where we can really use Malcolm X, because there's so much we do in math where we go in X formations, like whether it's cross multiplication, or you're multiplying fractions and you're cross canceling to simplify the fractions, or even in like calculus when you're doing taking the derivative using the quotient rule, and then the way you set up the different derivatives of the parts, so many different opportunities. And even like, so for those that are like more familiar with math will recognize this, like when you factor in quadratic trinomials. And
all right, keep it simple for me, bro. Come on, man.
So there's,
about to expose me for the dummy I am.
There's ways for
you big dummy, you big dummy, you big dummy, you dummy.
Sorry. Of factoring trinomials, right? Some people on the internet, on YouTube, they call it the diamond method. But I'm like, and again, it's a manifestation of Kujichagulia. It's self-determination, because if people can name things whatever they want, like Europeans, they were going to name a squared plus b squared equals c squared, the Pythagorean theorem. That was their decision that they made. And there's really nothing stopping us from calling, that's a universal principle. There's nothing stopping us from calling it whatever we want to call it. So I'm saying, like, instead of calling that factoring method the diamond method, I'm gonna call it the Malcolm X method, because even when you look at the videos, or that you see, you draw an X anyway. They say you draw an X, and you put the product of the first and the last number in the top, you put the coefficient of the middle term in the bottom, and then you got to look for the two numbers. It's like a puzzle. You got to look for the factors of the number at the top that also add up to the number at the bottom. And
so you use, like you said it earlier, you use math to teach history and history to teach math.
Exactly.
just to reinforce it. And I'm assuming I'm using, want to put words in your mouth, just a little bit, pause. Because our whole world is worshiping at the altar of white supremacy. So
Mhm.
you want to add a little diversification into that pie.
I don't even know if I'm trying to add it into that pie. I'm really trying to like
Well,
create
in the overall pie for the black student.
yeah. So it's not anything different from what they do. Like when we think about and I respect it, but I only have a problem with it when they try to force it upon us. I think it makes sense for Europeans to be Eurocentric because that's who they are. I think it makes more sense for us to be African centered because that's who we are. So, like, if you think about SAT questions, it could be a math word problem in the SAT, and they're talking about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson.
How many apples did they eat?
There's nothing innocent about that. What they're really trying to do is reinforce
patriotism.
They're trying to assert their cultural dominance by putting that in there. So I'm like, we can do the same thing, and we can, teach our children about, these different things from their own history that they might otherwise not learn because they're not going to get it in their public school or their charter school usually, unless you got a certain type of teacher in that room and they get lucky, which is unfortunate because usually if you have that teacher, he or she is like usually the one teacher in the whole building. And, because I've been that teacher. And like early in my career, I used to feel good about it. It was good for my ego. But then I stopped to think about it. I'm like, damn, like if I'm the only one, then that's actually hard. That's terrible. It needs to be a building full of people that are doing the same thing. So that way they get the continuity, throughout their educational experience. Yeah, systematics is, a way to, teach math using history. And another reason for it is when you think about the number of students or the number of adults that don't really understand what a percentage is and don't understand concepts like proportions, like really don't understand what that is and can't calculate. They can't even calculate a tip at a restaurant, right? But then you sit in a history class and you're like, well, 43% of the population, migrated, to this state or whatever. And a student can read that or they can hear it, but it's like, but you don't understand what a percentage is. So how is it that you actually understand what you said? It's not possible. You can't possibly understand it because you don't know what a percentage is. But if as long as you can read it, then it's kind of hard for people to understand that you didn't really comprehend what you just read. So people can kind of hide. So that's another reason for it. It's like, yeah, I want people to understand like, percentages because you see them, all the time, like in history classes, fractions, proportions, or, and then you can start really getting to like, you start to really understand the history better. Because it's one thing to say, we were enslaved, we're owed money, we worked this amount of time. Like, yeah, that was bad. But what if you can actually quantify that? Because then it becomes a different conversation once you can actually quantify it by using math.
Because it's not as abstract.
Yeah.
It's concrete.
They can't quantify that. They're like, oh, well, I know it was bad. It was fucked up. That's all I know. But okay, let's talk about how fucked up it actually was.
Right.
Use math to do that.
Anthony, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say a little bit something about the because you're talking about the percentages. And the reason why I wanted to say something is because they talk about the stock market a lot. And percentages are very heavy and utilized in that, even in politics. But the reason why I'm bringing up stock market because it's a little easier to kind of run the numbers behind it. When they talk about, oh, something went up 200 basis points or 20 basis points, like to understand that it's really 0.25%. Like it's not really that much. Kamara, you and I, we had this discussion before. So when it comes to like something have fell down 45%, 45% from what?
Right.
What was that 20 basis points from what? Like if it went up 100% today, okay, so it went from $1 to $2. Okay, when you actually ask them like what was the actual starting number?
But people don't think in percentages. They think in money. And I'm guessing, and I don't know why, I'm guessing going to Professor Kill, we're not introduced to it enough. We don't talk in that language.
It makes you right to be the victim of scammers, because somebody could just tell you anything and they'll dress it up and make it sound like it's amazing. But then if you don't know how to do the math, and so this is why I'm so vehemently against.
But it's not just the math, it's the math and understanding the language, right? Because one BIP or one basis point is only 1% of 100% or 1%. And so you have to also be antiquate. What is that? I'm making up words, y'all. I'm like Al Sharpton up here. You have to be intimate with the language of whatever industry you're looking to work in as well.
But see, I would even say that's part of the language of math, though, because finance, you may call it basis points, but it's like a basis point is what, a 100th?
Yep.
Yes, it's 100. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's place value.
Yep. That's all it is.
That's base 10. That's base 10 expansion.
I don't know what base value is.
It's like base 10.
No.
We're not going to get it tonight, y'all.
place tens, hundreds, thousands. I had this conversation with my students today at Cheney. I was like, because I was reflecting on this conversation, and I got to get ready to go. But I was reflecting on this conversation I was having with my 8-year-old nephew, and he wants to be a billionaire. So then I started to kind of challenge him a little bit on that, and because he said he needs that much money, and I'm like, well, why do you need that much money? He's like, and
inflation.
He was like, because I want to be comfortable. And what I realized was that he doesn't know enough math to really understand how much money that is. So we in class broke that down, like almost like on like Richard Pryor, Brewster's Millions. Like if you had to spend $1 billion in a year and you spent the same amount every day, every hour, it's like $2.7 million a day. That doesn't even account for the interest that you're generating off of the $1 billion or have been generating off the $1 billion. It's like $114,000 per hour.
I love it when they stack up the money to the buildings to really give people representation of how much $1 million versus $1 billion is. Right. And it's crazy.
And it's an issue of place. But if you don't even have a concept of place value, then you'll think that, it's $1 billion. It's a lot of money. That's how much I need. It's like 9 zeros.
Yeah.
Even $1 million is a lot.
Yeah. Hey, welcome.
Oh, it's
What's that?
Carla. That's from my side. Yeah, Carla and DJ or Dojo, he call herself. For Don J.
All right, well, we've been here almost over an hour and a half, right? So I think we all can agree. Math is great. Financial literacy is important too, but we should never stop learning, and we need more math geniuses in our community. Is that fair, Anthony?
No, I won't say math geniuses. I was just saying.
No, I'm shooting for the top. We got math geniuses.
No, people who enjoy math but also don't discourage and talk about that they don't like math around their kids, and that's what I had to teach most of my parents is that just because you don't like math, don't tell your kids you don't like math, because I'm gonna have them loving math. And to get around you, like,
so you're gonna have them being geniuses. So you just like to debate, man.
They're gotta be geniuses. It's like financial people. Like, we don't discourage people who just want to learn about finance, but we discourage against the people who just say, like, finances suck. Like, I just suck at finances, and that's what they shut off the door. And it's like,
that's right. That's right. Because words are powerful, right? The Bible says you will have what you speak. Life and death lies in the power of the tongue. But if you love something, 9 times out of 10, at some point, your genius is going to show up in that. You disagree, Anthony? I know you're going to say that. I disagree.
And I think the love comes from like conceptual understanding, because growing up, I didn't love math. It was like more of a means to an end. It was something that I did well at it in school, and I would get, attention. I would get a lot of positive attention, like from my family, from my classmates. I liked that. But I didn't really develop a love for math until more recently, when I started to realize, this is why this makes sense.
Right, but that love for math now pushes you to become a college professor, which means you are a genius. You are a master.
Everybody to be a genius.
You damn right. Because
Words matter. I got you.
Words matter, and I feel like a lot of times, to your point, Anthony, that we are always shooting for the bottom of the barrel, and we're never looking to ascend to greatness, to God status. So
Don't
not
limit
trying
the
to
kids.
be.
Don't limit the kids. I just want to leave that.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So, all right, everybody. I appreciate everybody joining us. This is the Finance Row Show. I'm Kamari Yellis. I know I'm going to come back soon because I want to talk about NVIDIA. I'm not sure if that's going to be tomorrow because I do have a funeral to attend, or one day over the weekend.
Sorry.
But NVIDIA has been, thank you.
My
NVIDIA
condolences.
has been kicking, thank you. NVIDIA has been kicking butt, and a lot of people have asked me a lot of questions about it. So I plan on doing a deep dive on that. So again, I appreciate you all. Make sure you all subscribe to the channel, and Akil, tell everybody where they can find you at.
Yeah, so on YouTube, just type in All This Math. That's the name of the YouTube channel. It's for parents, so parents can understand the new math. It's for your children, so they can get homework help.
Oops.
It's also for teachers. If teachers need, like, some different methods for, teaching certain problems, or if you just want to play the videos, on your smart board in your classroom or whatever, or assign the videos to your students. I'm also on social media at All This Math, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I have a lot of almost 600 videos on YouTube, but I'm going to be doing more TikTok videos, more short and sweet TikTok videos.
Start with YouTube Shorts.
That's yeah.
And then from YouTube Shorts, just populate them to TikTok and IG.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And the terms are searchable through Google, so it'll be a little easier.
Yeah, and actually, I was in a YouTube Shorts workshop today. Make sure you have good titles and good descriptions. But the audience doesn't care about all this, right? So I appreciate everyone being here. I'll be back the next time. Again, save, invest, and be willing to think, y'all. All right, until the next time, y'all have a great night.